The distress signal. The research vessel Gentle Current drifted through the empty space between star systems. Captain Veltar pressed his crystalline fingers against the control panel. The touch felt cold through his transparent skin. The ship's engines had stopped working 3 hours ago. Now the lights were getting dimmer. "Captain," said his science officer, Krelon. Her voice sounded like tiny bells ringing. "The life support systems are failing. We have maybe 6 hours left." Veltar looked around the bridge. His crew of 12 Zephyrians sat at their stations. Their bodies were made of living crystal that sparkled in the fading light. They were beautiful beings, but very fragile. Their homeworld had gentle winds and soft rain. Space was already dangerous for them, even with their special environmental systems. "Send out a distress call," Veltar ordered. "Use all frequencies. Someone might hear us." Krelon's fingers danced over her console. The crystal formations on her head glowed brighter as she worked. "Distress signal sent, Captain. But who will come? The Altarian Council ships are 3 weeks away. The Silk people are even farther." Veltar knew she was right. Only civilized species could help them. Their ship needed special technology to keep them alive. The temperature had to stay just right. The air had to be pure. Any rough handling would crack their bodies like glass. "We wait," Veltar said quietly. "We hope." The hours passed slowly. The ship grew colder. Some of the younger crew members started to dim. Their crystal bodies were losing their inner light. This was how Zephyrians died, slowly growing dark until they became just pretty rocks. Far away, in a different part of space, the cargo ship Iron Will was carrying supplies to a mining station. Captain Sarah Chen sat in her command chair drinking coffee. Her ship was big and ugly compared to the Gentle Current. The walls were thick metal. Everything was built to last. "Captain," called her communications officer Tommy Martinez. "I'm picking up a distress signal." "Sounds alien." Sarah put down her coffee cup. "Put it through." The voice that came over the speakers was musical but desperate. It spoke in the common galactic language that all space-traveling species learned. "This is Captain Veltar, of the Zephyrian research vessel Gentle Current. Our engines have failed. Our life support is dying. We need immediate assistance. Please, if anyone can hear this, we have children aboard." Sarah looked at her crew. There were 8 humans on the Iron Will. They had been working together for 2 years. They came from Earth, a planet that most aliens called a death world. Humans were barely welcome in galactic space. Most species were afraid of them. "Boss," said her engineer Marcus Torres, "I can track that signal. They're not too far away." "Tommy, any other ships responding?" Sarah asked. Tommy checked his instruments. "No, ma'am. The signal's been going for hours, but no one's answered." Sarah thought about it. If they helped, word would get out. Humans weren't supposed to interfere with other species. The Galactic Council had made rules about that. They said humans were too dangerous, too violent. They came from a world where everything tried to kill them. But Sarah looked at her crew again. Marcus had 3 kids back on Earth. Elena Vasquez, their doctor, had spent her whole life saving people. Jake Williams was just 22 and still believed the universe was basically good. These were good people. "Marcus, how long to reach them?" Sarah asked. Marcus ran the numbers. "If we push the engines hard and make some dangerous jumps through hyperspace, maybe 18 hours. Sarah's first officer, David Park, shook his head. "Captain, those jumps could tear the ship apart. And if we help them, the Council will ban us from half the galaxy." Sarah stood up and walked to the main screen. She could see the stars streaking past as they traveled. Somewhere out there, alien children were dying in the dark. "I didn't join the merchant fleet to follow Council politics," she said. "I joined to move cargo and help people." "Tommy, send a response." Tommy activated the communication system. "Gentle Current, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the human vessel Iron Will. We have received your distress call. We are coming to help you. Hold on." On the Gentle Current, the crew couldn't believe what they heard. Krelon checked the translation 3 times. "Captain," she whispered. "They said human. That signal came from a human ship." The bridge became very quiet. Every Zephyrian knew about humans. They came from Earth, a world of storms and earthquakes and predators. The gravity there was so strong it would crush a Zephyrian instantly. The air was full of poison called oxygen that would burn their crystal bodies. Humans themselves were terrifying. They had thick skin and hard bones. They could survive in heat that would melt a Zephyrian. They were warriors and fighters. The story said they had covered their world in wars for thousands of years, but they said they would help us. whispered young Sil-Ara from the science station. She was barely adult by Zephyrian standards. Her crystal body was still growing. Veltar looked at his dying crew. The ship was getting darker every minute. Some of the crystal formations on the walls had already gone cold and gray. "They are the only ones who answered," he said finally. "We have no choice." On the Iron Will, Marcus was already pushing the engines beyond their normal limits. The ship shook as they made their first dangerous jump through hyperspace. Normal ships took safe, slow paths through the folded space, but Marcus was plotting direct lines through regions that would destroy most vessels. "Elena, get the medical bay ready," Sarah ordered. "We don't know much about Zephyrian biology, but we might have wounded." Dr. Elena Vasquez nodded and headed to the medical section. She started reading everything the ship's computer had about crystal-based life forms. It wasn't much. "Jake, help Marcus with the engine modifications," Sarah continued. "We need every bit of speed we can get." Young Jake Williams ran to the engine room. He had studied alien technologies in school. Maybe that knowledge would help. The Iron Will jumped through space like a bullet. Each hyperspace jump took them closer to the dying alien ship. Marcus had to calculate each jump perfectly. One mistake would throw them into a star or scatter their atoms across a solar system. Hours passed. The crew worked without rest. They knew that every minute counted. Somewhere ahead of them, aliens were dying. Finally, Tommy called out, "Captain!" "I've got them on sensors." "The gentle current is dead ahead." Sarah looked at the main screen. The alien ship appeared as they dropped out of hyperspace. It was beautiful, all curved lines and shining crystal panels. But the lights were very dim now. "Open a channel," Sarah ordered. "Gentle current, this is the Iron Will. We have arrived. Prepare to receive assistance." Captain Veltar's voice came back weak and full of static. "Iron Will. We did not expect—" "We are grateful, but we must warn you. Our ship systems are not compatible with your kind." "The environment inside will kill you," Sarah smiled grimly. "Captain Veltar, you clearly don't know much about humans. We specialize in surviving where we shouldn't." The rescue was about to begin. First contact protocol violation. The Iron Will moved closer to the gentle current. Sarah Chen stood on her bridge, studying the alien ship through the main screen. The Zephyrian vessel looked like it was made of glass and silver. But its lights were almost gone now. "Marcus, what do you see?" Sarah asked her engineer. Marcus Torres ran his scanners over the alien ship. "It's beautiful, Captain, but it's dying. Their engines are completely dead. The power core is failing, and their life support." He shook his head. "It's designed for beings that need almost no oxygen and very low temperatures." "How low?" Dr. Elena Vasquez asked from behind him. "About -40 degrees Celsius, and the air inside has almost no oxygen. It's mostly nitrogen and some gases that would poison us." Sarah nodded. She had expected this. Every species evolved on different worlds with different conditions. What kept humans alive would kill Zephyrians, and what kept Zephyrians alive would kill humans. "Tommy, open a channel to their ship," Sarah ordered. The communication system crackled to life. Captain Veltar's voice came through weaker than before. "Iron Will, we are grateful you came. But we must tell you the truth. We cannot survive in your environment, and you cannot survive in ours. We do not know how you can help us." Sarah could hear the despair in the alien captain's voice. She looked at her crew. Marcus was already pulling up technical diagrams. Elena was studying alien biology files. Jake was checking their equipment inventory. These people didn't know how to give up. "Captain Veltar," Sarah said, "humans are very good at solving impossible problems. Give us some time." Sarah turned to her crew. "Ideas." Marcus spoke first. "I can see their ship's design. Their life support is built into their hull. We can't just beam them over. They need their special environment. What if we create a connection?" Jake suggested. "Like a tunnel between our ships?" Elena shook her head. "The temperature difference would kill both species. The moment we open a connection, their cold air would freeze us and our warm air would boil them." Marcus was studying the technical readouts. "Wait, look at this. Their environmental system is modular. Each section can be isolated and controlled separately." Sarah looked at the diagrams. The Zephyrian ship was built in segments, each with its own life support. "You're thinking we could create a safe zone?" "Exactly," Marcus said. "We modify one section of their ship, create an environment that won't kill us instantly, but also won't hurt them too much. Then we work from there. On the gentle current, the crew was getting weaker. Young Solara had stopped glowing completely. She sat at her station like a beautiful statue. Captain Veltar touched her arm gently. The crystal was cold, Captain, Krelon whispered. If the humans board our ship, they will die. Their bodies cannot handle our environment, and if we let their environment in, we will die. Veltar looked around his bridge. Half his crew was barely conscious. The children in the lower sections had gone completely dark. He had to make a choice. Iron will, he called weakly. What is your plan? Sarah's voice came back strong and confident. We're going to modify Section 7 of your ship. Our computers show it's currently empty. We'll create a mixed environment there. Warmer than your normal air, but not warm enough to hurt you. Less oxygen than we need, but enough to keep us alive for a while. Veltar was shocked. The humans wanted to work in an environment that would slowly kill them. Iron will, that is suicide. You cannot survive in such conditions. Captain, Sarah replied, you don't understand humans very well. We come from a death world. We're used to working in conditions that should kill us. Marcus was already suiting up in a modified environmental suit. The Iron Will's engineers had worked for centuries to create equipment that could keep humans alive in hostile environments. They had to. Their own world was hostile enough. I'm going to take a small team over, Marcus announced. Elena, Jake, and me. We'll have 4 hours of air in the modified section. That should be enough time to rig something. Sarah wanted to go herself, but she needed to stay on the Iron Will to coordinate. Be careful, Marcus. We've never worked with Zephyrian technology before. Technology is technology, Marcus said with a grin. If it can be built, it can be fixed. The 3 humans put on their environmental suits and took tools that had been designed for work in space. They climbed into a small shuttle and flew over to the gentle current. The Zephyrian ship was even more beautiful up close. The hull was made of living crystal that had grown into complex patterns. But the patterns were dimming as the ship died. Marcus found the airlock for Section 7. The Zephyrian technology was elegant but fragile. Everything was designed for gentle handling by beings with delicate crystal fingers. Elena, Marcus said over his radio. Can you monitor our vital signs? We're about to enter their modified environment. Ready, Marcus, Elena replied. Your heart rate is already elevated. Try to stay calm. The airlock opened with a sound like wind chimes. The 3 humans stepped into the Zephyrian ship. The first thing they noticed was the cold. Even with the environmental modifications, the air was freezing. Their breath came out in white clouds. The oxygen was so thin that they felt dizzy immediately. This is like working on top of Mount Everest in a freezer, Jake gasped. Focus, Marcus said. We have 4 hours. Let's see what we're dealing with. The inside of the Zephyrian ship was like walking through a crystal cave. The walls were smooth and curved, glowing with soft light. Everything was beautiful, but it was clearly built for beings much more delicate than humans. Marcus found the main control panel for Section 7. The symbols were completely alien, but the basic principles of engineering were universal. Power flowed from here to there. Data moved through these conduits. Life support connected to these systems. Jake, can you make sense of these readings? Marcus asked. Jake studied the displays. His young eyes were good at seeing patterns. I think this shows power distribution. And this? This might be their equivalent of our oxygen recyclers. Elena was monitoring not just their vital signs, but also the environment around them. The air in here is getting worse, she warned. Whatever modifications they made, they're not stable. Marcus nodded. He could feel it too. The cold was seeping through his suit. The thin air was making him dizzy. But they had a job to do. Okay, Marcus said. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to jury-rig their environmental system, connect it to our portable life support units, create a buffer zone where both species can survive long enough to work. Is that even possible? Jake asked. Marcus was already opening his toolkit. Kid, I once fixed a warp drive using duct tape and a bicycle pump. Trust me. For the next 2 hours, the 3 humans worked in conditions that would have killed most galactic species instantly. They rewired alien technology using human tools. They connected systems that were never meant to work together. Their fingers were numb from the cold. Their heads were light from the thin air. But they kept working. Finally, Marcus stood back from the modified control panel. Elena, try it now. Elena activated their portable life support system. Slowly, the environment in Section 7 began to change. The air got a little warmer, a little richer in oxygen, not enough to be comfortable but enough to survive. Iron Will, Marcus called on his radio. We've created a safe zone. It's not perfect, but humans can work here for extended periods. Sarah's voice came back full of relief. Outstanding work, team. Now get to their engine room and fix their ship. On the Gentle Currents bridge, Captain Veltar was amazed. The humans had done something that Zephyrian engineers said was impossible. They had created a compromise environment where both species could survive. But he was also frightened. If the humans could modify Zephyrian technology so easily, what else could they do? No wonder the Galactic Council was afraid of them. Iron Will, Veltar called weakly. Your people. They have done something miraculous. But please hurry. We are running out of time. We're just getting started, Captain, Sarah replied. The hard part comes next. Deathworlder Solutions' Marcus Torres looked at the Zephyrian engine room and whistled softly. The space was 3 times larger than the Iron Will's engine room, but everything inside was broken. Crystal formations that should have been glowing with power were dark and cracked. Delicate machinery lay in pieces on the floor. What happened here? Jake Williams asked, stepping carefully through the debris. Dr. Elena Vasquez was scanning the area with her medical equipment, looking for radiation or toxic gases. The readings are strange. It's like their entire power system just gave up. Marcus knelt beside one of the broken crystal formations. Through his environmental suit's headlamp, he could see that the crystal had fractures running through it like a spider web. This wasn't an explosion, he said. This was a cascade failure. One system failed, which put too much stress on the next system, which failed, and so on. From his position on the Iron Will, Captain Sarah Chen listened to her team's report. Can you fix it, Marcus? Marcus stood up and looked around the engine room. Everywhere he looked, he saw Zephyrian technology that was too damaged to repair. The crystals couldn't be fixed. They were living structures that had died. The delicate machinery was too broken to put back together. But Marcus Torres hadn't become chief engineer by giving up. He had grown up in the asteroid belts around Saturn, where one broken machine meant everyone died. He had learned to fix anything with whatever was available. Sarah, I can't fix their engines, Marcus said, but I can build them new ones. There was silence on the radio for a moment. Then Sarah's voice came back. Come again? Their power crystals are dead, but the basic structure is sound, Marcus explained. I can strip out our backup fusion reactor and install it here. Then I'll use their existing power conduits to distribute energy throughout the ship. Elena looked at him in shock. Marcus, that's insane. Our technology and their technology are completely incompatible. That's what everyone said when I married my wife. Marcus grinned. Didn't stop us from having 3 kids. Jake was studying the alien power conduits. The energy signatures are completely different. Our fusion reactor produces high-energy plasma. Their crystals generated some kind of harmonic energy wave. Marcus nodded. So we build a converter. Jake, you're good with electronics. Can you create a buffer system that takes our energy and converts it to something their ship can use? Jake looked around the engine room. The Zephyrian technology was broken, but the basic principles were clear. Energy was energy, whether it came from fusion or from living crystals. I think so, but it would violate about 17 safety protocols. Kid, Marcus said, clapping Jake on the shoulder. Safety protocols are written by people who never had to work in a Zephyrian engine room, wearing an environmental suit. For the next 4 hours, the 3 humans performed engineering miracles. Marcus removed the backup fusion reactor from the Iron Will, a device the size of a refrigerator that could power a small city. Getting it through the modified airlock between the ships required cutting holes in both vessels. Elena monitored their health while also helping with the technical work. The modified environment was slowly poisoning them all. The cold was making their joints stiff. The thin air was giving them headaches. But they kept working. Jake built the energy converter using parts from both ships. He took precision instruments designed for Zephyrian crystal technology and connected them to human fusion controls using cables and circuit boards that he assembled by hand. This should not work, Jake said, looking at his creation. It looked like a sculpture made from spare parts and determination. Most of the best engineering shouldn't work, Marcus replied. That's what makes it interesting. Meanwhile, in the Gentle Currents medical bay, Captain Veltar was visiting his crew. Many of them were unconscious now, their crystal bodies dim and cold. The youngest ones, like Silara, looked like beautiful statues. Veltar was amazed by what the humans were doing. Zephyrian engineering was based on harmony and precision. Every component was grown specifically for its purpose. Everything fit together perfectly because it had been designed that way over thousands of years. But the humans were taking random pieces of technology and forcing them to work together. They were solving problems by brute force and creativity instead of elegant design. It was ugly and crude and somehow brilliant. "Captain," came a weak voice from one of the medical beds. It was Krelon, his science officer. "I have been monitoring the humans' work. What they are doing, it is impossible." "But they are doing it," Veltar replied. "Yes," Krelon whispered. "They are violating every principle of good engineering, and it is working." Back in the engine room, Marcus was making the final connections between the human fusion reactor and the Zephyrian power grid. The work required him to reach into spaces that were too small for someone wearing an environmental suit. He had to take off his gloves to manipulate the delicate connections. The freezing air bit at his exposed hands immediately. Within minutes, his fingers were numb and clumsy, but he kept working. "Marcus, you need to put your gloves back on," Elena warned. "You're getting frostbite." "Almost done," Marcus grunted, forcing a reluctant connection into place. His fingers were turning white, but the converter was almost complete. Jake was watching the power readings on his improvised control panel. "Energy levels are building. The converter is holding steady. I think we're actually going to pull this off." Finally, Marcus stepped back from the fusion reactor. His hands were badly frostbitten, but the work was done. "Jake, bring the reactor online." Slow and easy. Jake's hands danced over the controls he had built. The human fusion reactor came to life, sending energy through the converter and into the Zephyrian power grid. Throughout the gentle current, lights began to come on. The crystal formations in the walls started to glow again. The life support systems hummed back to life. On the bridge, Captain Veltar watched his ship come back from the dead. The displays showed power flowing to every section. Environmental controls were stabilizing. His crew was saved. But more than that, he was witnessing something that would change how he thought about humans forever. These beings from a death world had taken two incompatible technologies and made them work together through sheer stubborn determination. "Iron will," Veltar called, his voice stronger now that his ship had power again. "Your people have performed a miracle. We owe you our lives." Sarah's voice came back warm and tired. "Just doing our job, Captain. How is your crew?" Veltar looked around his bridge. His officers were beginning to stir as the warming air revived them. Young Solara's crystal body was starting to glow again. "They are recovering," Veltar said. "But we must ask, how did you know how to do this? Your technology and ours are completely different." Marcus answered from the engine room, his voice hoarse from breathing the thin air. "Captain, when you come from a world that's always trying to kill you, you learn to make things work with whatever you have. We've been jury-rigging solutions since we learned to use tools." Elena was treating Marcus's frostbitten hands while monitoring the environmental readings. "We need to get back to the Iron Will soon," she reported. "This modified atmosphere is taking a toll on all of us." But Jake was staring at the power readings with fascination. "Marcus, look at this. The energy conversion is more efficient than it should be. Somehow, combining our technology with theirs made both systems work better." Marcus looked at the displays despite his exhaustion. "Well, I'll be damned. The harmonic patterns from their old crystal matrix are actually improving our fusion efficiency." Captain Veltar heard this exchange over the open channel. The humans hadn't just saved his ship. They had discovered something new in the process. Something that could benefit both species. "Iron will," Veltar said carefully. "It sounds like our technologies work well together." "Better than well," Sarah replied. "Marcus, what are you seeing?" "The Zephyrian harmonic patterns are stabilizing our fusion reaction," Marcus explained. "We're getting 20% more power with much less waste heat. This could revolutionize how we build starships." Veltar made a decision that would have shocked the Galactic Council. "Iron Will, would you consider a joint research project? Our scientists working with your engineers?" There was a pause from the human ship. Then Sarah's voice came back, careful but interested. "Captain, that might cause problems with the Council. Humans aren't exactly welcome in most of galactic society." "Perhaps," Veltar said. "It is time that changed." As the three humans finally made their way back to the Iron Will, They left behind more than just a repaired ship. They had left behind proof that the species everyone called Deathworlders were not monsters to be feared but partners to be valued. The rescue was complete, but the real work was just beginning. Understanding the monsters, Captain Veltar stood in his ship's medical bay, watching his crew recover. The crystal beings were glowing brighter now that power had returned to the gentle current. Young Silara was sitting up in her medical bed, her crystalline body sparkling with returning health. But something was wrong. The ship shuddered suddenly, and warning lights began flashing on the medical displays. "Captain, to bridge," came Krelon's urgent voice over the communication system. "We have a structural problem. Section 4 is collapsing." Veltar rushed to the bridge, his crystal feet clicking on the floor. On the main display, he could see the damage. The stress of the engine failure had weakened the ship's framework. Now that power was restored, the ship's systems were detecting cracks that could tear the vessel apart. "Iron Will," Veltar called urgently. "We have a new problem. Our hull is compromised. Section 4 is collapsing and there are Zephyrians trapped inside." Sarah Chen's voice came back immediately. "How many?" "5 crew members, including 2 children," Veltar replied. "But the section is sealed off. Our repair teams cannot reach them safely." There was a brief pause from the human ship. Then Sarah spoke again. "We're sending a team over." Veltar felt a chill that had nothing to do with his ship's temperature.
"Captain Chen, you do not understand."
"Section 4 is completely unstable. The gravity is fluctuating wildly. The atmosphere is toxic even by our standards. Your people cannot possibly survive in there." "Let us worry about that, Captain," Sarah replied. On the Iron Will, Sarah was already assembling a rescue team. Marcus was still recovering from his work in the engine room, his hands bandaged from frostbite. But Jake Williams was suiting up in the heaviest environmental gear they had. "I'm going too," Elena announced, checking her medical equipment. "Elena, this is a structural rescue, not a medical situation," Sarah pointed out. "Those are children in there," Elena replied firmly. "If they're hurt, they'll need immediate treatment. And I'm the only one here who studied Zephyrian physiology." Sarah nodded. She understood. This was what humans did. They protected children, even alien children they had never met. "Dave, you're going as team leader," Sarah ordered her first officer. "Take Jake and Elena, full environmental gear and emergency cutting tools." David Park was already putting on his suit. He had served in Earth's military before joining the merchant fleet. Dangerous rescues were something he understood. The 3 humans made their way through the modified Section 7 and into the main body of the gentle current. The alien ship was beautiful, but they could feel it shaking around them. The structural damage was getting worse. "This way," came Captain Veltar's voice through their radios. He was guiding them through the ship's layout. "Section 4 is 3 levels down, but I must warn you, the path is dangerous even for us." David led his team through the crystal corridors. The walls were beginning to show stress fractures. Some of the delicate formations were cracking and falling to the floor. "Jesus," Jake whispered, looking at the structural damage. "This whole section could collapse any minute." They reached the entrance to Section 4. The doorway was twisted and partly blocked by debris. Through the gap, they could see the section beyond. The floor was tilted at a crazy angle. Pieces of the ceiling were hanging down like deadly icicles of crystal. "Iron Will team," came a weak voice from inside. "Please, help us." Ellen appeared through the gap. In the unstable section, she could see 5 Zephyrians huddled together. 2 adults were protecting 3 children with their own bodies. One of the adults was clearly injured. His crystal arm was cracked and dim. "We're coming," David called back. "Hold on." But as David tried to squeeze through the gap, the ship shuddered again. More debris fell, making the opening even smaller. "Sir," Jake said, studying the damage, "the structural supports are failing. We have maybe 10 minutes before this whole section collapses completely." David looked at the situation. The gap was too small for a human in a full environmental suit. The section beyond was unstable and filled with hazards that could kill anyone who entered. In other words, it was exactly the kind of situation humans specialized in. "Jake, help me get out of this suit," David ordered. "Sir?" Jake looked confused. "The suit's too bulky. I can't fit through the gap wearing it," David explained, already working on the clasps. Elena grabbed his arm. "Dave, you'll die in there." The atmosphere will poison you in minutes. David looked at her calmly. Elena, there are children in there. I've held my breath longer than a few minutes. This was the moment that Captain Veltar truly began to understand humans. Through the ship's internal sensors, he watched David Park strip off his environmental protection and crawl through the twisted gap into Section 4. The human was now in an atmosphere that would kill him quickly. The gravity was fluctuating so wildly that he was sometimes floating, sometimes slammed against the floor. Crystal debris was falling around him like deadly rain, but David kept moving toward the trapped Zephyrians. "Sir," Jake called through the gap, "catch this." He threw David a portable breathing mask, not a full environmental suit, just a simple device that would filter the worst of the toxic air. David caught the mask and put it on. It would buy him a few more minutes, nothing more. He reached the trapped aliens and knelt beside them. Up close, Zephyrians were even more beautiful and fragile than he had expected. The injured adult looked like a sculpture made of diamonds and starlight. The children were tiny, perfect crystal beings who barely came up to David's waist. "It's okay," David said softly, though he knew they probably couldn't understand his words. "I'm here to help." The injured Zephyrian looked up at him with eyes like jewels. When he spoke, his voice was like music, even weakened by pain. You are human. You should not be here. This place will kill you." "Probably," David agreed. "But not before I get you out." Through the gap, Elena was watching with her medical scanners. "Dave, your oxygen levels are dropping fast. You have maybe 3 minutes before you pass out." David nodded and started moving the Zephyrians toward the exit. The injured adult was too heavy for David to carry alone, but Jake had thrown through a portable anti-gravity generator. The device would reduce the Zephyrian's weight enough for David to move him. But as David activated the generator, the ship shuddered again. A large piece of crystal ceiling broke free and fell toward one of the Zephyrian children. David didn't think. He threw himself forward, covering the child with his own body. The crystal struck his back, tearing through his uniform and cutting deep gashes in his skin. The child looked up at David with wonder. Here was a creature from a death world, bleeding and dying to protect someone he had never met. "Elena," David called weakly. "I'm running out of time. You need to pull them through the gap." Elena was already working with Jake to create a rescue line. They threaded cables through the gap and attached them to the Zephyrians. One by one, they pulled the crystal beings through to safety. David came last, barely conscious from oxygen deprivation and blood loss. As Jake and Elena pulled him through the gap, Section 4 finally collapsed completely behind them. They made it back to the modified Section 7, where Elena could treat David's injuries and get him back into a proper atmosphere. The Zephyrians huddled together, safe but amazed by what they had witnessed. Captain Veltar arrived at Section 7 as Elena was bandaging David's wounds. The human was conscious but weak. The Zephyrian captain looked at him for a long moment. "Why?" Veltar asked simply. David looked up at him confused. "Why what? Why did you risk your life for us? We are strangers. We are not even the same species. Your own government considers us separate from your concerns." David thought about the question for a moment. Then he shrugged, which hurt his injured back. There were kids in danger. "That's enough." Veltar stared at him. This was not the answer he had expected from a Deathworlder. He had been taught that humans were violent and selfish, caring only for their own kind. But David Park had nearly died to save Zephyrian children he had never met. The injured Zephyrian adult that David had rescued stepped forward. His name was Telmanus, and he was the ship's historian. Despite his cracked crystal arm, he bowed formally to David. "David Park of Earth," Telmanus said in careful human language, "you have saved my daughter's life. By the laws of my people, I owe you a life debt." David started to wave this off, but Telmanus continued. "More than that, you have changed my understanding of your species. I have studied the galactic records about humans. They say you are dangerous because you come from a world of violence and death." "That's true," David admitted. "But what the records do not say," Telmanus continued, "is that such a world would also teach you to value life above all else. You know what it means to lose someone, so you will risk everything to save anyone." Captain Veltar felt something shift in his thinking. The Galactic Council had taught all civilized species to fear humans. They were called Deathworlders as an insult, a warning about their dangerous nature. But maybe the Council had misunderstood what Deathworlder really meant, maybe. It didn't mean bringer of death, maybe. It meant one who has faced death and chosen life, as the rescued Zephyrians were taken to medical care, and David Park was helped back to the Iron Will. Veltar made a decision that would echo through galactic history. He activated his ship's communication system and began recording a message to the Zephyrian Council. "This is Captain Venu Alliances." 3 weeks later, the gentle current limped into Zephyrian space with an unusual escort. The human cargo ship Iron Will flew alongside the crystal vessel, its ugly metal hull a stark contrast to the alien ship's elegant beauty. Admiral Kithara of the Zephyrian Defense Fleet couldn't believe what she was seeing through her flagship's sensors. She had expected to find wreckage, maybe a few escape pods if they were lucky. Instead, her missing research vessel was returning home under its own power. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the gentle current. Captain Veltar is requesting permission to dock, and he's asking for diplomatic status for the human vessel." Admiral Kithara's crystal formation flashed with surprise. Diplomatic status for humans? The Galactic Council had made their position clear. Humans were to be avoided. Contained, certainly not treated as diplomats. "Put Captain Veltar through," she ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing Captain Veltar on his bridge. But something was different about him. He seemed brighter, more confident than when he had left on his research mission. "Admiral Kithara," Veltar said formally, "I request permission to bring my ship and our human escort to dock at Sanctuary Station." "Human escort?" Admiral Kithara repeated. "Captain, explain yourself." "Admiral, the crew of the Iron Will saved our lives," Veltar replied. "More than that, they have shown us that our understanding of their species has been completely wrong." Admiral Kithara looked at the readings from both ships. The gentle current was indeed functional, though its power signatures were strange. "Captain, your ship's energy readings are unusual. What happened to your engines?" "That is part of what I need to report," Veltar said. "The humans repaired our ship using their own technology. The fusion crystal hybrid system they created is actually more efficient than our original engines." The Admiral's formation darkened with concern. Humans had modified Zephyrian technology. This sounded dangerous. "Captain, you will dock immediately for debriefing. The human vessel will maintain distance and await inspection." On the Iron Will, Captain Sarah Chen heard this exchange over the open channel. She wasn't surprised by the Admiral's caution. Humans were used to being treated with suspicion. "David, how are you feeling?" Sarah asked her first officer. His injuries from the rescue had healed during the journey to Zephyrian space, but the experience had changed him. "I'm fine, Captain," David replied. "Though I have to admit I'm curious to see how this plays out." Through the Iron Will's main screen, they could see Sanctuary Station growing larger ahead of them. The Zephyrian space station was like an enormous crystal flower floating in space, its petals made of living material that sparkled with inner light. "It's beautiful," Elena whispered from her position at the science station. "Yeah," Jake agreed. "Makes our stations look like flying scrap heaps." Marcus, his hands still bandaged but functional, was monitoring the power systems of both ships. "Sarah, the Zephyrians are scanning us pretty intensively. They're definitely nervous about having humans here." Sarah nodded. She had expected this. But she also trusted Captain Veltar. The Zephyrian commander had proven himself to be honorable and fair-minded. At Sanctuary Station, the gentle current docked at one of the crystal berths. Captain Veltar and his senior staff were immediately escorted to the Admiral's conference room. The space was designed for Zephyrian comfort, low gravity, cool temperature, and soft harmonic sounds that helped crystal beings think clearly. Admiral Kithara studied the report that Veltar had transmitted. The technical details were fascinating, but the cultural observations were troubling. "Captain," she said finally, "you claim that humans risked their lives to save Zephyrians they had never met, that they worked in conditions that should have killed them, without asking for payment or reward." "That is correct, Admiral," Veltar replied. "And you believe this contradicts the Galactic Council's assessment of human nature?" Veltar's crystalline form brightened with conviction. "Admiral, I believe the Galactic Council has never actually met humans. They have made judgments based on fear and incomplete information." Admiral Kithara activated a holographic display showing the galactic political situation. The human sphere of influence was marked in red, isolated from most other civilizations. "The Council's position is clear," she said. Humans are dangerous Deathworlders. They are violent, unpredictable, and aggressive. They must be contained for the safety of civilized species. Then explain this, Veltar said, activating his own display. It showed David Park shielding a Zephyrian child with his own body. Does this look like the action of a violent aggressor? Meanwhile, on the Iron Will, Sarah was receiving an unexpected communication. Iron Will, came a musical voice over the radio. This is Telmanus of the Gentle Current. I am requesting permission to visit your ship. Sarah was surprised. Telmanus was the Zephyrian historian that David had rescued. Of course, Telmanus. You're welcome aboard. An hour later, Telmanus arrived at the Iron Will in a small crystal shuttle. He was wearing an environmental suit designed for the human ship's atmosphere. The first Zephyrian ever to voluntarily enter a human environment. Sarah met him at the airlock. Through his transparent suit, she could see his crystal body sparkling with nervous energy. Captain Chen, Telmanus said in careful human language, I come to make a request. What can we do for you? Sarah asked. I wish to propose a joint research expedition, Telmanus said. Zephyrian scientists working with human engineers. Together, we could study the fusion crystal hybrid technology, perhaps develop new discoveries. Sarah was intrigued but cautious. Telmanus, I appreciate the offer, but humans aren't exactly popular with the galactic community. A joint expedition might cause problems for your people. Telmanus's crystal form flashed with determination. Captain Chen, your people saved my daughter's life, but more than that, you have shown us new possibilities. The combination of human innovation and Zephyrian precision could benefit both our species. Back in Admiral Cathara's conference room, the debate was intensifying. Captain Veltar had presented his full report, including technical specifications for the hybrid engine system. The efficiency improvements are remarkable, Admiral Cathara admitted. But Captain, cooperating with humans could jeopardize our standing with the Galactic Council. Admiral, Veltar replied, perhaps it is time to question whether the Galactic Council's policies serve the best interests of our people. This was a radical statement. The Zephyrian civilization had been part of the Galactic Council for thousands of years. Their crystal cities were built on principles of harmony and cooperation with other civilized species, but those principles had also led them to automatically accept the Council's judgment about humans. What are you proposing, Captain? Admiral Cathara asked carefully. I propose that we invite the humans to establish a joint research station in our space, Veltar said. A place where both species can work together safely. If the Council objects, we point to the scientific benefits. Admiral Cathara was quiet for a long moment. As a military commander, she understood the value of having allies who could work in impossible conditions. As a Zephyrian, she valued the pursuit of knowledge above political convenience. The Council will not approve, she said finally. Then we do not ask for approval, Veltar replied. We ask for forgiveness afterward. 6 months later, the Joint Research Station New Harmony was officially opened in Zephyrian space. The station was a marvel of combined engineering, human durability merged with Zephyrian elegance. It could house both species comfortably and safely. The scientific discoveries began immediately. Human fusion technology enhanced by Zephyrian harmonic principles produced energy sources that were cleaner, more efficient, and more stable than either species had achieved alone. But the real breakthrough was cultural. Other species began to hear about the human-Zephyrian partnership. The story spread through galactic communication networks, tales of humans risking their lives to save alien children, reports of scientific advances that benefited everyone. The first to respond were the Meridian Collective, a species of gaseous beings who lived in the atmospheres of giant planets. They had been struggling with an ecological disaster that was poisoning their homeworlds. New Harmony Station, came their transmission. We have heard of your success combining different technologies. We have a problem that may require unconventional solutions. Captain Sarah Chen, now the permanent human liaison to New Harmony, smiled as she received the message. Marcus Torres was already studying the technical specifications of the Meridian's problem. Tell them we'll take a look, Sarah said. That's what we do. Within a year, New Harmony had received distress calls and research requests from 12 different species. The Galactic Council found itself in an uncomfortable position. They could hardly forbid scientific cooperation that was producing such beneficial results. Admiral Kethara, now serving as the Zephyrian representative to New Harmony, stood in the station's observation deck watching human and Zephyrian engineers work side by side. The two species moved differently, thought differently, approached problems differently.